This is actually out of a publication I found that looked at exactly where nurses' roles as far as clinical nurse coordinator, and nurse PI, and what would their role be in relation to the participant as opposed to, say, their responsibilities in the overall research. You know, not every research grant hires a nurse. I've never hired a research nurse in all my research, and I'm going to go through a lot of my research. I guess I function as that nurse, even though in most of this research I've been the PI or co-investigator. And that's an interesting thing that you can do. And we'll talk about NIH funding and other funding. So basically I function as the nurse even if I'm the principal investigator. My coordinators tend to always be a bachelor's of science, but currently because of my work with a prevention study, my nurse researcher, what I wanted was her background's in public health. And she has a bachelor's, and she actually has a master's in public health. You know, when you look at how you can move forward in nursing research, you want to think about a topic. And there's so many topics in urology. You want to, of course, come up with your research questions, review the literature, what's out there, read research literature on that specific topic, come up with a hypothesis. You want to seek funding opportunities, but I'm going to show you an online survey that we did that really didn't require any real funding. So we'll talk about that. It just required giving the participants, put their names in a lottery to get a gift card. So the actual research came out to be $500 I needed. Design the study, you have to, of course, understand how you protect human subjects, collect data, analyze it, report, and build on the results. What I have found to be the most difficult out of all these, I have no problem with all of them except for analyzing the data. I have such a difficult time finding a statistician to help me with that. And I hear nurses research say that all the time, to find someone really that can really understand. And I know when I got my doctorate, I paid someone thousands of dollars to help me do that, who was outside my university setting to find someone. So that to me has been one of the biggest challenges I've encountered. So what can a principal investigator? You know, I want you to know that you, as a nurse, you can be a principal investigator, and even if you do not have a PhD, I'm an example of you can be a PI with a doctorate in nursing practice. You know, we talked about getting that. You know, before I got my DNP in 2011, I talked to a lot of my colleagues, which many of you know, Jean Wyman, Kathy Bergio, who has retired, so has Jean, and a lot of other, Mary Palmer, who's also retired, and asked them, should I go on to do it, because I have been involved in research. And they really said to me, no, well, do you really need it, Diane? You've done so much research. But I have to tell you that once I got it, NIH recognized my doctorate and really did not look on it as different from the PhD in nursing. And I know a lot of the PhD nurses were kind of a little upset that, because I don't know if you know the numbers, but actually the number of nurses going for their PhD has decreased. And I think that that's something to think about with a DNP as far as us moving and really doing a lot more in the research out. But as a PI, you're responsible for preparation, conduct, completion of the research and project, and you're really the leader of the thing, but you are ultimately responsible. This is just a busy slide, but I pulled this down because this is actually kind of the role of the PI, the principal investigator, as determined by NIH. So this is what they define, and there really are a lot of definitions of what you are responsible for. So you're responsible, for the past 7 years, I've been responsible for a budget through my NIDDK grant of over, I guess I've gotten 10 million. I have to tell you that for at least 5 years, I was right now I'm currently the highest funded researcher in the Division of Urology at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm the only one that has NIH funding, and I'm including my urologists. But for the past 5 years, I've been #2 NIH funded in the Department of Surgery at Penn. So, and you have to realize Penn is actually one of the top 10 funded NIH universities in the country. So yeah, it really, as that, the money you bring in, because I don't know if you all realize that my NIH funding, I get, Penn is the second highest overhead, so overhead is called indirects, and what that means is what the university gets. We're #2, Harvard's #1. Our overhead is 62%, which means every $1 I get from NIH, 62 cents goes to Penn. I know. You guys are shaking your head. Yeah. So that it really is. People don't realize a lot of our, the federal dollars are going to support universities as far as within their research. You have to follow, of course, ethical conduct and what the guidelines are. And, part of what I do whenever I bring on any co-investigator, or of course myself, is I have to complete the regulations for what they call, informed consent, Declaration of Helsinki. So there's a lot of regulations that you must follow, and you must share them with whoever your funder is, and it's expected, and the university expects you to keep that up to date. So I'm going to go through my research trying to follow this pathway. So when you look at evidence practice, we're starting at formulating your clinical question, searching for the evidence around it, appraising the evidence to see what's there and maybe what you want to research, applying evidence to practice, and evaluating the evidence. So I want to walk you through some of these studies that I've done and kind of show you where it's going and maybe kind of trigger where you think you can maybe do some of this research. So you want to identify research topics. It's usually from your personal experience. You'll see a lot of my research that I've conducted over the years has really been based on my work in urinary incontinence and behavioral therapies. But you'll also see that I've branched out to do quite a bit of work as far as around devices, which we use, intermittent catheterization and that. You can get it from your practice. I think most of us can get research from that. Interaction with peers. I've interacted with a lot of my peers. I've named some: Jean Wyman, Mary Palmer, Kathy Bergio, as far as trying to come up with what their views on certain topics and that. And then, of course, from published literature, professional organizations. And one of the ones I'm not going to go into, but which I'm finalizing, is actually money I've gotten from SUNA. SUNA gives grants, and there's actually 2 grants I've been involved in. One, if you were at the fall meeting, you heard Chris Talley present the data of a SUNA grant that Jean Wyman got, that I'm one of the co-investigators, where we looked at continence specialists and we did a survey. The grant that I just literally stopped enrollment 2 days ago, March 31st, was on a grant that SUNA gave me before COVID. And I really can't remember how we started this, but it was really with Chris Bradway, and we were talking about indwelling urinary catheters and how we don't know a lot about them and what's being done. So a group in Scotland, Suzanne Hagen, who's well published in urology, is a PhD nurse in Scotland. And she wrote to me and said, I'm really interested in looking at indwelling urinary catheters. Can we do something together? And SUNA is a wonderful source of some funding. So what we did is we put together a proposal to look at indwelling urinary catheter use in the home, well, in out there as far as long term. And we formulate our proposal, and there's certain steps when you talk about that. So we wanted to know what usual care was, and we wanted to know how often they were being changed. And when I'm talking about indwelling catheter, it could have been suprapubic or urethral catheter. We had to set up, well, how are we going to do this? Of course, we set up what we were going to collect. And it's been really a fascinating process to do this with the group in UK, because they have a national health insurance where their nurses are hired by the health, to go out and see these patients, where in the US it's different. It has been the biggest challenge during COVID to do this study. And I know SUNA has been wonderful, saying, Diane, where's your report? How are you doing? Can you present this year? We will present this fall. But basically, we had to think about things like, I told you my statistician was a problem. I did not have a statistician at Penn. So Scotland is going to do the statistics. Suzanne's group will do them for us. She's going to analyze the data. We did this study where literally we set up REDCap, which is a database that our university has. REDCap was set up by the US government, and any university can use it. I'm sure many of you have the capability, and we literally were able to set up REDCap so that the home care nurses at Penn put in the data directly into REDCap.